Okay, my name is Jason Danley. For those of you who don't know me, I am the chair of the Healthy Aging and Care Research Innovation and Knowledge Exchange Network at Oxford Brookes University. I am very excited today to introduce two wonderful speakers, that's just very exciting, extra exciting. Those speakers are Lucinda Jarrett, who is the artistic director of Rosetta Life. She has done numerous different projects related to sort of participatory research in arts and health-related research. So, and this has included end-of-life care, hospice, and palliative care, as well as work that we're going to hear a bit more about today. We also have Karen Gillingham here, who is the creative director, learning and participation at Garsington Opera. And together, Karen and Lucinda have been working together on a project that we're going to hear more about and see some of today. And the title of their presentation, we'll get right to that, is the rehabilitation of stroke patients and carers through performance arts. So without any further delays, I'm going to turn it over to Karen and Lucinda to talk to us about their project. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Jason. Yeah, I'm Karen, and we thought we'd start off by contextualizing a little bit about both of our arts organisations so that you can see how this all fits together. And it's a partnership project which has been very fruitful, and it's happened over a series of quite a lot of years, 5 years in total. So Garsington Opera, we are an opera company, we're an opera festival that runs every summer. We usually put on about 4 or 5 operas, and we have a year-round learning and participation programme, which is for all ages. And the idea is you can go on a kind of life journey through the company. You could start when you're really young. We work with 4 and 5-year-olds, and then there is something for everyone at every stage. But our expertise is putting on productions, leading workshops, reaching out to people that maybe have barriers to involvement. We really seek particularly young people who wouldn't ordinarily get the experience, and so we do that by going into schools and things. And I wanted to show you our opera house just so you can see it. It's built on the Wormsley estate, which is between Stoke-on-Church and Ibston. Let me know if you can see this. And we built it as a temporary structure. Is that showing, Jason? Assume it is, yeah. Lucinda's nodding, great.
Yeah,
so it's
great.
A temporary structure, and the idea was that we would take it down every year after the festival, but we've now got planning permission to keep this building up. So we've managed to add things to it, but it's, I believe, the only glass opera house in the world. It's very beautiful, great place to bring people, and do visit it at some point if you can. You're welcome. Here it is. There's gardens around it. This is the back of the auditorium. So there's like picnic areas and a bar. You can see people in, and you can see the stage there on the side with all those umbrellas. That is for Magic Flute, that production. There's the stage. It's got an auditorium of 600 people. It's kind of important to know this because of the production we're going to talk about was on quite a large scale. And the participants you're going to meet in one of the videos, well, in the video we show, talk about this place. So I just wanted you to see it. So I'm an artist that trained, I did a creative arts degree at Manchester and sang in musicals for 10 years and started directing at English National Opera as a staff director, and then got really into opera productions, but particularly community-based work and workshops. And I guess I'd describe my career as a sort of portfolio career, which is something that's quite known now, which didn't used to be when I started. So there's lots of different things that I do. And having been at Garsington for a while, Lucinda luckily found me. We ended up having a conversation, being put together, and she told me about the amazing work that they do. And Garsington don't have any of that expertise at all. And it was just really interesting when our minds met, and we kind of came up with this idea along with lots of others actually, but it kind of evolved. And because Garsington is a relatively small organisation, we are able to react quite quickly, and I'm going to let her talk a bit more about what the project is. But just I think the biggest thing is partnership and finding organizations that complement each other. We just couldn't have done this project without that partnership. So I'm going to pass over to Lucinda. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen. And thanks, Jason, for the opportunity to speak. So Rosetta Life is a small arts and health charity. As Jason mentioned, we began in hospice care, enabling people to tell their life stories. And from hospice care, we began working in stroke and neurorehabilitation after my father had a stroke in 2007. And I realized that, well, the hospice understands arts and arts delivery really, really well in the context of holistic care. The NHS finds it more challenging. So we set ourselves the challenge of working within the NHS and the stroke care pathway. We began on the clinical wards of the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurorehabilitation. And at that point, I began to think about developing work in the community. Like Garsington, but Rosetta Life is small, but we're much, much smaller. We're micro. And so when we want to give ambition to all those we work with, we work in collaboration and in partnership. We can't do things on our own. So unlike many arts and health charities who deliver sessional work, that is work each week, which exists in the context of an arts workshop, art or crafts or a dance workshop, our ambition is to work in healthcare context, but enabling people to make performances. And enabling them to make performances means co-creating with them. Co-designing, co-creating, and co-producing is the heart of our mantra. And so when we began working in the community in South London, we wanted to give people the ambition of making the most extraordinary work possible. And so we conceived of the idea of working to create an opera. And initially, it was a partnership with Garsington Opera and the V&A. So we had this beautiful London space, the V&A, the context of their exhibition, Opera, Passion, Power and Politics, to introduce people to opera, and the extraordinary skills that Karen and the adult community company at Garsington brought. That first opera was almost like an R&D. It was a 20-minute opera exploring the narrative of recovery from stroke. And what was interesting about it is our evaluation showed that every single member of the audience, that's 100% of the audience, felt that their perception of disability had been transformed, and it had had a positive impact on that perception of disability. So 100% of people who experienced that opera had transformed their perception of disability and thought differently about stroke. In that context, we thought, wow, not only do we have the capacity to change the lives of people living with stroke, but also the audience. We can create a caring community if we can create performances that have such a dramatic impact on perception. Now, that in itself is the remit of Rosetta Life. Our remit is to create performances that not only transform the lives of participants, but change an audience perception of stigma of disability. So we, together, Garsington and Rosetta Life, were able to have this incredible impact. But the significance then was not only do we create a caring community by shifting perceptions, but the significance is the company on stage. So we have a stroke performance company, a performance company of people living with stroke, an adult community company who in a macro concept, they mirror society, the adult community company and people living with stroke. If they can work together, then surely we're mirroring the way that we would like people living with stroke to be accepted in the wider community. Add to that the professionalism of professional singers, and you have the artists who also care, and you have this amazing caring community. So that's what we did, and that's the beginning of our journey, which you'll hear more about later. But that's probably a good place to show you the first excerpt. So what we wanted to show you is a short film that shares with you the impact of the performance on our amazing company of people living with brain injury and stroke, intercut with excerpts from the opera that was staged at Garsington. Thank you.
It's 10 a.m. we've got places to go, places to go. We've got places to go.
So it was very exciting to be in such a big place. Quite frightening, slightly overwhelming, but what was lovely is that we were all there. It was all about us being together and doing things together and spending time during lockdown together in rehearsals and having something to look forward to.
Something totally new. I mean, my background is in sales and marketing, and to be performing with professionals was absolutely amazing. The support from the staff, the people within the group who we did rehearsals with, the professionals, they were all so helpful and understanding. It was quite testing, challenging physically and mentally. If there's one I could say, criticise maybe, is that on the actual rehearsals that we had at Garsington, there was a lot of downtime, and I just think it didn't run as quickly as maybe it could have done. But other than that, it was just a superb experience. Fantastic.
I'm interested to know what it feels like being on such a huge stage.
Well, being on a stage, I've done it a couple of times, but the first time I was a bit nervous, yeah.
No, like the previous one was short, was good for him, but this one make him a bit uncomfortable.
Were you uncomfortable?
Me, no, I was fine, absolutely fine.
I could see at times you were reassuring him that the whole volume of noise, the sheer scale of it all, was probably a little bit distressing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and then I just try to make him to see we just showing is our life and our story, and to enjoy the things. That's good things to do. All the time I try to explain him, but sometimes we can do it just between us. But when you performing, it's quite hard. But I still try to do sometimes.
Sometimes when you're making a libretto into music, you make little tweaks and changes. Did it remain true to your experience?
Yeah. Remember true, yeah. Was exactly what's happening. And then when they say that for Fernando, Pepe means hello, was come to my heart because it's so real. Yeah, it was amazing. Everything happened in there was our own story.
I think mine was tweaked a bit for the performance, but that was fine.
How was it tweaked?
So there were some parts, so the bit about when my family came and sang, my family have always been very positive with me, and I think it sort of came across that they were less positive in the thing, but that sort of added to the emotion. So I suppose it was true for other people's stories, not just mine. But it was very emotional, and I did cry in the actual performance, which I hadn't done when we were rehearsing. I think because we hadn't sort of done it all the way through before we actually sort of did it on the stage. So I think it's that rehearsal time, isn't it? When it all came together, it was slightly overwhelming. It was very beautiful though, and it brought back lots of memories from the things that we've done that had happened to me before, and I've put to one side. And I was exhausted afterwards, but it was quite different as well from the little one we did at South Street, because that felt very much all of our making. We felt that we had all put stuff into that one, and we all contributed, and everybody had their bit, their solo bit, and at times it kind of felt very focused on the three of us rather than on everybody. Even though, you know, everybody's experiences were included, it felt sort of 3 stories rather than 15 stories. Does that make sense? At times I felt a bit lost. I wasn't quite sure where I was and what I was doing. I followed Elizabeth most of the time because she did know.
The show was very short.
It's long by our standards.
Yes, but it felt like we'd rehearsed it for so long that it would be an hour and a half performance, didn't it? And it wasn't that long. It was over very quickly. Yes.
I expect we have more time to talk, to chatting, and talk to the audience, and you know, that's thing I think we should be done next time.
So more time for feedback and conversation.
Yeah.
How was it for you? Do you agree with that? So you're nodding your head.
Yes, I do agree. Yes, I really enjoyed the show. I was a bit nervous going on stage, but I overcome that. That's the first time I've ever been on the stage performing public, really.
And you did very well.
And I've done really well.
But I think Ben was very anxious.
Yes, I was.
Weren't you at one point?
I was really nervous.
And just needed to find a reassurance. And he went to different people in the group, and we all looked after each other.
Reassured me, yeah.
Well, I was the new boy, so I can't say anything about any other performances. I thoroughly enjoyed the whole thing. I found the social side very positive. Meeting every week was a major step forward, coming out of a stroke and coming out of COVID. Garsington itself, I had been briefed about it before because a friend of mine did some work there as an architect, so I knew the scale of it, but I hadn't appreciated quite how beautiful the place is. And also on the actual night of the performance, with us all coming together, that in itself was very inspiring, and the quality of the singing I thought was out of this world. The professional singers were really top notch. I think James was particularly strong. I really think he got the empathy bit. He was outstanding. and I was mesmerised by his whole performance. I really was.
I mean, I think that's all of them were so kind to us. It was slightly anxiety-making having somebody else singing your bit and not quite knowing what they were going to do or where they were going to go.
Hats, gloves and gloves, marshmallows on sticks, sparkle pepper and leap, dance and blow.
Mel was very good at saying, well, what would you do? How would you move in this sort of situation? And copied my movements, which was very, very nice.
Amazing people. They just try to make sure they do well your personality. Yeah, was good. They were kind in asking things and agree with everything you say. Try to help you. Was good.
But I thought Rob was very good as Fernando, because what was lovely was he got down to Fernando's level. And
I must see my wife, my wife, my wife, my wife, my wife. Where is she? Here, we are here, patiently waiting for the first. God wants to fly.
He very much felt, that he was being Fernando. Victoria for us was very instrumental, wasn't she? She was very comforting.
Thank you. So I'll just pick up there a moment. So from that, you'll see that this community of people who come through this trauma of stroke, who had incredible cognition, mobility, and speech issues, were able, with the confidence of the cast, the production team, to perform on the stage at Garsington. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the journey it took to get there, just how the script evolved, and then I'm going to hand to Karen to tell you about the actual production. So our work has been very heavily researched. We know that performance gives people confidence and improves mobility, communication, speech, cognition, and gives people agency. So we trusted the process largely. But what we knew after that first performance was we wanted to mirror the wider world that cares, to create that caring community on stage, and so that could be mirrored in the wider world. So the first gap we identified was actually the hospital and the NHS staff. So in 2019, we performed on the wards of Wickham Hospital with the support of the consultants, and we brought the NHS staff and NHS patients together and told the story of the care in the hospital and the story of the experience immediately after trauma. What's important to note here is that we're working in an acute trauma unit. So people have experienced a stroke sometimes 24 hours or 48 hours before they meet us. And we were going in with Garsington Adult Community to write songs about that experience. And that line you heard, "A small boat in high waves," was a song written on the trauma ward of the stroke unit at Buckinghamshire Hospital. Then we were due to perform on Garsington stage in 2020. But when COVID struck, we brought the performance online and created a short 12-minute opera that brought in another element of that caring community, the carers themselves. And it told the story of the family care, the care of family members from stroke. And each time the central story, the drama of recovery, was retold. It was rewritten with the stroke community, with the staff and with carers. So when the final libretto emerged in late winter 2021, it had had the input of over 100 stroke patients in it, NHS choir, a carers chorus, Garsington adult community representing the wider community and professionals. And that full opera, a one-act opera, was then staged at Garsington. I think all I'm going to say now is I just would love you to remember that at the heart of this is a co-creation process working with very vulnerable people who gained the confidence to work on the most ambitious of stages because of the care of cast, production, and the ambition of our partnership. It was as ambitious, I'm sure, for Garsington to work in a fragile stroke ward as it was ambitious for us to encourage people to step onto a stage. And it was interesting, one last thing, is that you'll notice Colin said there was a lot of downtime. A criticism we had from the V&A is that people were too exhausted, but the adrenaline of going on that stage meant that people didn't want to rest. They wanted to keep going, which is really, really interesting, because at the V&A, people were absolutely exhausted and said, we can't do that. We need rest time. We need downtime. We needed a lot more. But there was something about the ambition of that stage at Garsington that drove people to want to push themselves harder. On that note, to Karen.
Thanks, Lucinda. It's really nice for us to have the opportunity, I think, to talk about this project to you, because it makes you relive it, especially watching films again. So yeah, it's just kind of interesting. And just to pick up on what Lucinda said from Garsington's perspective, going onto the ward, you know, I agree, it was nerve-wracking for our artistic teams. And Lucinda mentioned that we brought some of the Garsington adult company with us. So there was it was kind of half and half. We tried to match the numbers. And I think what's extraordinary is the idea that everyone's an artist. So whether you are a participant or an artist leading or a consultant, you know, in the hospital, everyone became part of that creative process. And it was genuinely quite equal, because you learn so much from each other in all contexts. So I think that's the thing I would really celebrate about partnerships and collaborating in the right ways of you know, I learned so much as an artist going in from both the patients that, like Lucinda said, some of them had literally just arrived, and also some of the staff in there as well, and the way that they were working and responding. And the fact that, you know, everyone, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, is an artist in their own right. So I think that really celebrates that in our devising process. I wanted to describe a little bit about the production side of it. So Lucinda mentioned that we did a film because of COVID, but when we actually did this production, we were still in very severe restrictions that kept changing. I'm sure we all remember. So adults, there was only allowed to be 6 adults in a room together at any one time. They kind of restricted over 18s. And the way we got round that was we rehearsed outside. So that video you just saw was in an outside space, and weather permitting, we were actually able to meet outside and run rehearsals. But they were very limited, as you can imagine, because sometimes they were called off because of the weather. And also restrictions at certain points meant we couldn't rehearse. So the ideal was that we would bring these two companies together of 40 adults that Garsington Opera work with, and they're community adults from all walks of life. And then the group, the Rosetta Life stroke ambassadors group, was supposed to come together a lot more than they actually did. And I think it's a shame that they didn't, but they still did manage to interact in that very sort of pressured performance sense. We got around it by rehearsing outside, and with the adult company, we had to split them as well into 2 companies of 20 in each group because of the sort of space that we had outside. We had a bit of shelter over ours. So it was like a bit of a puzzle, and putting all of these groups were rehearsing separately, and then we fitted it together at the end. And I think they're run like any rehearsal that you might go into. It's a professional production environment. There's a stage manager, there's a team of artists. We do a music call where we learn the music, and then we often put it straight on its feet. So in opera rehearsals with all professionals for our season, everybody would be off copy before they arrive and work with a director. And Lucinda and I very much work as a two-hander. So I'm directing the drama side of it, but we collaborate on that all the time in terms of storytelling. And Lucinda is the movement director in this context. And so that was always a sort of dual thing. And then we have a vocal director and conductor as well. The difference with these rehearsals is we try and do, I would say, about 20 minutes of music and then 20 minutes of staging. So you keep alternating as people are learning and staging things. We do a mark out on the floor, so you can really, I didn't change very much, if I'm honest, about what I would do with a room full of professionals directing a production of Magic Flute to producing this. And it's just that emphasis of artists in their own right, and everyone is an artist. So that's how the production period worked. And then, of course, we met at Garsington on stage and did production rehearsals. They start with a stage and piano. So it's just somebody in the pit playing the piano for us and marking through, doing a technical rehearsal as well. So checking all the technology and things that have to move, lighting, etc. And then we go into a stage and orchestra. And we had a small ensemble for this piece, again, in the pit. I thought, were they in the pit, Lucinda? I'm remembering it right. So we did a stage and orchestra, and then we did a dress rehearsal. We put the production on in full, and then a performance. And the performance element that you're seeing excerpts of as we go, it was brilliant because, again, because of the partnership, Rosetta Life brought in a specialist who was able to really lead the Q&A and kind of delve into a conversation with the audience. And I think Garsington, I know, the broader team at Garsington as well, it's quite difficult to get everybody to understand what each department are doing. And I think a piece like this really blew people's minds because, like Lucinda said, it gave all of the audience a different perspective. And I got so much feedback in that way. So I think it did work really well as a project, actually. And you do ask questions about the production and things at the end, but I just wanted to explain how the process worked. Have you got anything you want to add to that, Lucinda?
I think I would add that I do change the way I work when I'm working with the community of people living with disability. It is interesting how much you have to remember that no one can remember things, which doesn't mean you change things slightly, because everything has to be improvised. And you're about to hear from the company about how important it was that I was visible, or that Victoria was visible, because the cognition damage from stroke means there is no memory. So actually creating a piece where you have to rely on muscle memory or body memory, or actually rely on improvisation, is quite challenging. But I think we managed it. And I think one of the key things we have to think about is how the skills of the adult community company actually frame that. And we could not be this ambitious without them, because they held the ambassadors and framed things for them in a beautiful way, as you'll see.
So we're going to show another section, just the last section of the same film now, just to finish it off.
She knew where everybody was going for everything.
She's been a constant throughout, hasn't she? To me, the preparation was amazing, because I got to meet all of these lovely people and become part of the process of creating the performance. And the friendships and joy of those weekly meetings was something that you really looked forward to each week. You know, couldn't wait to get there to meet everybody and to see what we were doing next. And then the performance itself, so I perform regularly in smaller venues and things, but to do something on that epic scale and with that level of professionalism. It wasn't daunting because I felt looked after and cared for throughout. I did feel unprepared, as I think a lot of us did, that we weren't quite ready, but we just did it, and that was great. You know, it felt very much as though, right, we've been doing this for several weeks. Oh, look, we're on stage. We were very lucky to have the professionals there to gild what we were doing, but it was our story, so I wasn't intimidated by them. I was just hoping they'd enjoy it, and it wasn't.
We did doing it.
Yeah, I was worried that they'd be thinking, well, this isn't Tosca at the Opera House. This is Rosetta at Garsington. I didn't want it to feel like a small thing for them, and I because it was so big for us, if that makes sense. So I wasn't daunted by them, but I wanted them to get into it and enjoy it. And I think my impression was that they did.
And feel part of it.
So I have memories of not being able to hold my tears back when one of the stories was being told, but I think the chap whose story was being told is not here today. That's the one.
They shot me 5 times, close range in the stomach. I escaped, full of hope.
And I can recall having throat problems on the night, on the actual night, and thinking, oh, I've got a solo line to do, I hope it doesn't sound too terrible. So other than that,
And it sounded wonderful.
It sounded wonderful indeed.
There's a
thank you.
massive amount of silver linings.
Yes,
If you look for silver linings, there are lots. For a start, I mean, a blue badge, the parking is so much better.
That's true.
This group has been excellent. Every one of you. I've gained friendships. I've gained, well, not so much confidence, because I was confident before I got my stroke, but I've gained friends, especially, and I'm more social.
I think the confidence is a big thing. The humour that's been generated just reinforces to me the importance of humour, and certainly it reduced the pressure, or any pressure that existed in rehearsals and before the performance. There was always joking and frivolity, I think, not to mention any names, Martin, but
I mean, I'd like a copy of the video that we made after the last one, because my speech was so significantly worse.
There's such a difference
in
to
that.
now.
And I'm sure it's to do with the singing, I mean, and the practice.
And more confidence as well.
Especially the singing. Who knew that our neurons could reconnect? So for me, it's the experience, it's the friendships, it's the group, it's everything about this group, really.
What's a piece of art?
Anything that gives you a different perspective on reality.
Harry, I'm noting that. What is art?
What is
That is a fantastic way you said that.
Anything that gives you a different perspective on reality.
To actually be involved on the night with my new friends in something that was of that quality and that good, it was just a wonderful experience.
When I see the size of that stage, it was frightening. But because when we done our little performance in South Street, it was just like a group of us, like we are now, and we all performed together. But to have other people there with us, like the Garsington Park Choir and the singers and the NHS who we'd never met before, never performed with before, and we all seemed to perform wonderful together. Well, I thought it was really something really special that we could all do this sort of thing together. Once we got onto the stage and we did start, the nerves did go a bit, and I thought, you know, right, this is it now, we're here now, we're doing it, and everything went absolutely, I thought it went very smoothly. There was no hiccups at all. I thought it was absolutely wonderful.
We had this small intimate little group, but that little group was part of a bigger group, and although the other choirs only rehearsed with us twice, was it?
Yeah.
In the end, it all merged together, and it was a fantastic performance.
Yeah, really
and it
good.
also shows you don't need a lot of time to rehearse, because we only had 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And 2 rehearsals with the other choirs, so it would have been nice to have more.
And Lee was amazing at getting us to sing in a different kind of way.
Such energy.
Such energy.
Yeah.
But Lucinda was there, and it was very comforting to see her. wasn't it?
Yeah. Thanks God, Lucinda was in the corner.
Yeah, that's right.
It means like feeling comfortable because she's there.
And with regards to scale, because there's a question about, you know, was this too big? I think actually, if we can do that, we can do anything.
Yes,
exactly.
I'm not frightened of whatever the next thing is, because we've done the massive big thing. You know,
the feeling of achievement, isn't it? If we can do
Very
that,
much so.
exactly.
Yeah,
why
we can
not?
do that. We can do anything.
Exactly.
Rehearsals weren't emotional. That performance really was emotional, and you know, the setting and everything else. Yeah, I think I certainly did. Yeah. Strength of a Lion. What a what.
Now, some of you were involved in I Look for the Think about a year ago.
Yes, the online.
How would you compare that initiative, which was a lockdown initiative, to this one?
It was completely different because we rehearsed online. We did see lots of people online, and that was actually, it was very comforting to do whilst we were in lockdown. It gave us a real purpose in lockdown. But it didn't have the element of nervousness.
Didn't have the personal touch, did it?
The personal touch,
Right.
no.
What's that, Tony? Sorry?
Didn't have the personal touch.
Which are sort of face to face.
Yeah, face to face with people, which is, I think, is so much better.
In the Look for the Thing, there was a lot of us involved in it, so it's bound to be slightly more bitty, slightly more generalised, if you like, in terms of experience. Whereas this was personal, it felt personal.
I think every one of us had a good chance for taking part. So, yeah, I didn't know Garsington at all.
I think the line in the opera was can I, can I, can I? And I think it should be followed by we did, we did, we did.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have 10 minutes, don't we, Jason? And we were hoping that you might have some questions for us. We realised that was very bitty. It was it's such a big project. It's 5 years of Karen and I working together, bringing NHS choirs, stroke companies, brain injury, adult community companies, professionals together in different ways. So do interject and give us your questions so we can fill in the gaps and find out what you'd like to know more about.
Thank you. That was so powerful and so moving, and what a wonderful project. And I see Rhonda has to leave, but she says, this shows the power of the arts in promoting recovery and keeping people well, especially experiencing arts in a group activity. And I'm sorry you have to go, Rhonda, but thank you for your comment. If anyone else has any other questions or comments, just pop them into the chat, and as they come up, I will.
I could respond to that, because I think it's really interesting that Rhonda's right. All the evidence shows that it is the group activity that is really significant here. And initially on the hospital, we thought we should be working one-to-one, but all the evidence was about the importance of the group, particularly after trauma or stroke, where you can test out a new identity and be witnessed and heard, and test or not whether your disability is going to be accepted at home by testing it in the confidence context of a group. So that importance of the group dynamic, where performance arts, of course, is really, really significant, is really, really important. Anyone else?
And I think that really, and also sort of reframes this notion of the condition, right? Of stroke, this idea that, it takes it out from like just an individual condition to something that we're all related to, we're all interacting with. I think, which is wonderful. That's really powerful, ability of the arts to do that.
But I think that's the essence, isn't it? It's about mirroring what we want to happen in the community on stage. So if I can be on stage with the Adult Community Company, maybe I can then perform to the wider community, and then I can go out in the world again. And it's that sense of mirroring in different levels. But I think it was interesting as well. I mean, you'll have heard, the challenges of staging the real lives of people. It was their stories. We didn't emphasize that enough, perhaps, Karen, but it was 3 people's stories that we told, and they were on stage with a professional singer. So they were there dancing with a professional singer, and their stories were told, and it was their verbatim text that was in the libretto.
Can I ask a really sort of pretty simple, obvious question, I suppose? I see we have a question from Sue first. Maybe I should ask hers first. Sue Chilton says, I'm interested in the potential for introducing creative arts into the nursing curriculum, as I've recently become aware of a range of examples of the impact to promote health. Sue, did you want to ask any other questions about how to do it and how to transfer these kind of ideas into a nursing program or anything like that?
I can pick that up if you want. So there are lots of examples now of, you're right, Sue, there are people who in London, largely pioneered by the Clod Ensemble, the arts to promote the values of self-care. Equally, on the wards of the hospital, we now run an early morning dance class at 8:30, and there's a stroke choir that was seeded for this company that still runs every week on the wards of the NHS hospital in Wickham, and we're about to start the same in Reading. And there are dance classes we run for the nursing staff in London. So I agree, particularly in the context of COVID, I think we've all become increasingly aware of how important the arts are, not only for the patients we care for, but for staff in terms of self-care, self-healing. It's really, really significant. And yes, they are being thought of, lots of companies doing them, including us, and it's very, very important. I think one of the values of the partnership was bringing the wider Adult Community Company onto the ward, as well as having the sessional delivery, and having the wider community company from Garsington come into the ward meant that there was one-to-one care for each patient. Every member of the Garsington community became that role of the arts as care, enabled people to facilitate care through the arts. And that's something I think that jointly at Garsington, we're very interested in, the role of arts as care, as an act of care. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Yeah, and not only were the Garsington Adult Company able to be in that role of carers, but they were also being cared for, right? They were getting, all of this artistic input from the patients and from the staff and everything as well. So it's that reciprocity in care too. That's again coming back to this whole relational group aspect of it. It's wonderful.
I would love to hear from you, Karen, because we heard from the patients about what an impact it was for them in terms of community and coming out of COVID, experiencing people and contact again. But they asked, what was it like for the community, the adult community chorus? What was it like for the adult community performance company? Did they enjoy it? And I'd love to hear from you what it was like, because we said it was a 5-year-long project. So many of the adult community company who were there at that first 20-minute performance at the V&A were there in 2021. So it'd be lovely to hear from you what it meant for them.
Yeah, I think that some of the adult company were quite apprehensive about it at the start, especially going onto the ward. And for some people, it's very close to home. Most of us know somebody in our families who've suffered the effects of a stroke, and I think for some of them that was a very hard thing to do, to go back or to face that as a reality. And it was amazing, I think, the transformation that happens with people and the understanding and the relationships people developed. And also they were being taught how to be a participant in that context, which took us, I think, Lucinda, at the beginning, it took us quite a long time to get the balance right and to brief everybody, including myself, in the right way to get that balance and to know how to support but not do for or speak for was a big thing. And that came out in the opera is very tempting in the gaps to speak for people, but actually it's just that it takes a moment to form the words. And I think once that was explained to me really clearly, I realized how many people in my family I probably speak for, children and adults. And it's really stopped me from doing that. And I think a lot of the adult company that I spoke to were talking about that particularly, and the friendships they formed. And some of them actually started to go back and volunteer and go onto the ward. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, and one that I think is just so important, like Lucinda said, for those groups to come together. Yeah.
I think it's really the essence of this is what you were saying about it being relational. Art isn't a transaction, it's relational. It's about how we build relationships. And that's what's difficult about the online working. Online working is essentially transactional. It's instrumental. You instruct because you can't co-create. We're each waiting for each other to talk. It's not a dialogic space. And so the significance of coming out of lockdown into this dialogic, co-creational, relational space was just phenomenal for me. It reminded me of the reason for live performance arts and how significant it is.
Absolutely, it's healing, really, right? That's what you're involved in. You guys are healers. I think that's amazing. So my quick question that I wanted to ask was, and I'm sorry if I missed this, but opera. I'm curious about how this particular art form was able to facilitate certain kinds of expression or certain kinds of interactions. I think it's not the most popular kind of widespread kind of art form that people engage with. And maybe people have certain, conceptions about what opera is, right? So I'm really interested in how that partnership worked. If people, maybe you just speak to that. Why opera, not other kinds of art forms, or what did that bring to it?
Do you want to go first, Karen? And I'll
yes.
I thought you would.
Then I'll let you answer. Yeah, I mean, opera is what we make it, right? It is ours, and it's a sung story, as far as I'm concerned, and it's the voice of the person. So I think opera means singing or telling a story, and it's a beautiful art form, but it isn't. I think I agree. I understand what you're talking about, the stigma around what some people perceive it as. And I think that it's something that I really believe everybody should have the opportunity to be exposed to and experience. And if it's not for you, that's also fine, but not until you've tried it out. You know, and it's an expression, isn't it? So when we sing a story, you know, whatever that voice is, and who's to say what that voice should sound like as well. So yeah, I challenge what that is.
So I'll completely second and third and fourth all of that, but add to that three things. There are always three things, aren't there? Firstly, if you've suffered a stroke, you have problems with your mobility, cognition, speech, and vision. So what better way to refire neurons or to spark recovery than engaging with an art form that delivers on all fronts? Singing, dancing, stage management, stage directions, and sight in terms of set design and the stage management. So one thing, opera is actually uniquely suited for neurorehabilitation. It engages every single sense and every single form of recovery. Secondly, it's really important to me that for the most marginalized, most vulnerable people, we're working with people who've lost employment, careers. In South London at the moment, 80% of our company comes from Black and ethnic minorities, and many of whom could not have real challenges with the economics of day-to-day living. And for a group of people who are that marginalized because of illness or disability, how important is it to have access to the most ambitious art form, the most epic of art forms on a scale like opera? Of course it is. It's incredibly significant to take people to Garsington Opera stage who would never normally visit it. Absolutely phenomenal. It's their art form. It's our art form. It's the most popular art form in the world. We can't deny people access to it because somebody says it's not for them. And why? Because of budget. Well, let's take the budget out of it. With arts and health projects, that's exactly what you do. And thirdly, and finally, if you want to engage with the symbolic nature of recovery, of refinding identity, the only way to do it is on the mythic scale of opera. Opera is about myth and archetype and redemption and fall. And what better art form to engage than opera for neurorehabilitation? Full stop.
I'm sold. That's wonderful. Brilliant. I don't see anything else in the chat at the moment. I think we're all just taking it all in and those having the words of all the. I know right now we don't have any of the participants who are living with stroke and here to speak to us today about their experience. But it's wonderful to hear from them and hear their voices in the video. So thank you for sharing that with us as well. I'm sure all of us would love to learn more, especially now we might be thinking, maybe I can use opera in my project, really to build those relationships and those links and to, as you say, to really make an impact and change, public perceptions, right? And especially about conditions which often have a stigma attached to them, right? So I'm sure we'd all love to learn more. Is there information on your website that we can access?
Absolutely. I'll put our website in the chat, and Karen, you can put yours. If you want to get in touch, do.
Okay, absolutely wonderful. Well, then my last thing is just to thank both of you for making the time today to come and speak to us. Okay, there it is, Rosetta Life and Stroke Odysseys. Wonderful, and Garsington Opera. Again, thank you so much for coming and talking to us about that. I do hope to keep in touch and talk to you more about this because there's so much in this huge project that we'd love to learn from. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Do keep in touch.
All right. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Oh, before we go,
Hmm.
it is my incumbent duty not only to thank you, but to wish Karen Gillingham a very happy birthday.
Thanks, Lucinda.
Happy birthday, Karen.
Thank you.
Go have fun.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. It's been great.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And thank you, everyone who came.